Those that incited violence on the street under the guise of protest, that tried to tear down what New York City police officers did every day. We tried to warn, it must not go on, it cannot be tolerated. That blood on the hands starts on the steps of City Hall in the office of the mayor.
It is a dangerous time for America, a simmering civil war that is now upon us. Street protests calling for death to cops, and a narrative being driven by those who are focused not on what will be good for all, but good for a few. And police officers in every city and every town on heightened alert for fear of their lives. Let's get to it. Pleasure to welcome back who has been on the inside and understands what life in law enforcement is really like. Retired and decorated former sergeant in the LAPD, author of Black and Blue, The Creation of a Manifesto, the true story of an African-American woman on the LAPD, and the powerful secrets she uncovered, Cheryl Dorsey. And also let us welcome retired New York City Police Sergeant, adjunct professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and author of The Criminal Investigative Function. Joe Giacalone joins us today. We thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ed.
Sergeant Dorsey, I'm going to begin with you. The soundbite that we just heard. The critics and also the police union there is blaming the mayor of New York for what they seem to believe is not having their back, not being behind them, and certainly not doing everything he can to make sure that this does not become a cops are killers rhetoric and sort of an agenda, if you will. Do you agree with what the police union in New York is saying?
Well, you know, I can't get caught up in the politics of what goes on there between the mayor and that union. I can't speak to the mayor's heart. I can't blame him for what happened. I think, and let me say this, let me offer my condolences to the men and women on the New York Police Department, as well as the families of those officers that were killed. But I don't believe that this really had much to do about the protests. I think rather this terribly disturbed young man was trying to make a point, and it's unfortunate that he did it by using these officers as a vehicle to draw attention to himself.
Would you then believe that the rhetoric that we have heard and a lot of the comments that we have heard in the last couple of weeks are those that would drive someone, whether mentally ill or not, in order to go out and look to kill a cop?
Well, certainly that's possible, and obviously it's probable because here we are. But, you know, to hold a group or a movement, this thing that's going on, I mean, there's a legitimate complaint out there about Black lives being taken at the hands of police officers, and so let's not forget that. But to say that that's the sole cause for someone who has a mental illness and acts in a way that's inappropriate, I don't think it's quite fair.
All right, Joe, let me come to you here because certainly it's not the sole reason, but would you then agree with those who say that this is divisive anti-cop rhetoric that we're hearing from the mayor and others?
Sure. I mean, and even the media, I mean, there's been perpetrated day in and day out, basically painting the police as the bad guys. And there's a lot of people in our society who are already criminals, and they keep on hearing this day in and day out, and they're brainwashed even further, and then they take it upon themselves to act.
So then what do we need to do then if we get to this point? Because obviously the rhetoric is already out there. So if you have these sick individuals that are walking around that have an access to weapons, how are then the cops supposed to be able to protect themselves and the citizens?
Well, this is the real problem, because now police officers who, generally brush blindly into many situations are going to have to take a step back and make sure that they're not walking into a trap or an ambush, something similar to what we saw in the 70s and 80s with the Black Liberation Army, where they were executing cops on fake radio runs. I mean, this is going to slow down the process immediately, and the safety of the officers is going to be paramount, because they can't help anybody if something happens to them.
Sergeant Dorsey, about a minute left, then we'll take a break. We have more to talk about here, but the NYPD has now told its officers not to make arrests unless absolutely necessary. Doesn't that mean many times that a cop may just stop a little bit, might be gun shy a little bit to go in and try and stop a crime for fear of their lives and what may happen then to the citizens?
Well, these are professionals, and so they're going to do their job, and they're going to do it in a manner that's safe for them and in a manner that's safe for the public. And so I don't expect them to do anything less than what they've been doing. I mean, clearly you have to use caution, because this is something that you cannot prevent. You don't know where there may be a nut.
Would you, though, not say that a lot of the cops right now, and I know we've used this word before, they're not scared, but there is a heightened fear for their lives?
Absolutely. And I mean, that goes without saying. There are dangers inherent to being a police officer. And so we never let our guard down. But that would be my hope. That would be my thought. They just need to be more vigilant and more diligent in the way that they perform their duties day to day now because of what's going on.
All right, Sergeants, please stand by, both of you. Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey and Sergeant Joe Giacalone return after the break. We dive into the powerful police unions and their part in rooting out the bad cops and keeping the good ones on the street. And at 22 after, syndicated talker Jerry Doyle weighs in on where the narrative goes from here. It's all coming up on MidPoint.